You know, guys, I saw the Tennessee Titans' new stadium in the news yesterday, and I really want to do a video just talking about it. We're going to discuss why it was in the news, but when it comes to the Titans' new stadium, this is something that I really haven't covered. This saga was basically solved by the time I started doing and really covering these stadium related issues, giving updates on the situation with this stadium. Originally, they wanted to try and open it in 2026. There was a narrative that the Bills and the Titans would have a new stadium opening the same year. Then they pushed it back to 2027 with a possibility of pushing it back to 2028. But now there's been more reports that have come out. Titans targeting February 2027 for the new stadium to be open. So it seems like it's going to have a soft opening if they open it in February of 2027. Obviously, the Titans will be playing the 2026 regular season at old Nissan Stadium, and then they will possibly be moving into new Nissan Stadium. I will say one of the things I would make it mandatory when it comes to these stadiums, if you build a new stadium, you really need to get a new sponsor. I don't want to call it New Nissan Stadium. Just get a brand new sponsor. Have Tesla sponsor it. Call it the Tesla Dome. Have Apple sponsor it. When are we going to get some of these bigger corporations to sponsor these stadiums? But it's like, I don't want to, like, New Nissan Stadium, New Highmark. Let's just shed the old title. Let's start fresh. Go with a giant, maybe AI-based corporation for your futuristic stadium. That's what I would do. But I do think they've got a deal still with Nissan, so we're going to have to call it New Nissan Stadium. And I want to talk about the stadium. Obviously, you can see that they are giving updates on where they're building it. It's right next to the old Nissan Stadium right next to that river, and then they're building it in the parking lot just above it, and they're actually turning the stadium as well. You can see, quote, "We've already hit the ground running," says Reggie Polk of Polk and Associates Construction, one of the construction companies involved in the project. "We have a lot of great trade partners that have already mobilized, and they're getting started. If you've been by the new stadium, you'll see that we are already demoing out the existing parking lot, and we're having meetings every day to make sure that our teams logistically are coordinating well." And so they haven't even started building the actual new stadium. They're still demoing the parking lot surrounding it. But the big news is they do want to open this in February of 2027, which basically confirms this stadium will be opening in 2027. Because even if there's a delay, by 3 or 4 months, so what is it going to open in the summer of 2027? It's still going to be ready for the regular season of 2027. And new Nissan Stadium, around $2.1 to $2.2 billion, which I think is, not that it's reasonable, but you understand the price tag for a place like Nashville, especially when you consider, the Cleveland Browns possibly building a stadium in Brook Park. It's going to be about $2.4 billion, so it's even going to be more for Cleveland in Brook Park if they do go with that than for the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. And I did also want to discuss just the stadium in general because, again, I really haven't done a specific video regarding this stadium. I tried to find a bunch of different, maybe more unique renderings. A lot of these I'm sure you guys have already seen. This has been a stadium that's been well documented in terms of renderings. It was kind of just like a clean-cut deal. There was really no saga where they were like, oh, we might leave Nashville. We've got 4 different renderings. It was really just always these renderings, and they didn't really deviate from these at all, at least not much. Now, there were also other renderings that got released yesterday, including a video of the surrounding area. And basically, Old Nissan Stadium is going to become your typical hub with different restaurants and different places for people to gather, things like that, around the stadium, which is going to be a lot different from where they are currently, where they've just got a giant parking lot surrounding Nissan Stadium as is. There's going to be a lot less parking, that is for sure. It's interesting because we know Nashville possibly will be getting an MLB stadium as well. And if you look at the original renderings for where this hypothetical MLB team would be, they would be called the Nashville Stars, I guess. It's right next to the old Nissan Stadium, which obviously is not going to exist by the time, Nashville possibly gets an MLB expansion team. But the location of it is also going to have to be different because that entire area where you see that rendering for the new MLB stadium, it's being redeveloped surrounding new Nissan Stadium. So it's an interesting little thing to take into account there. Now, this looks like an older, less detailed rendering. Originally, it does look like, a very generic design, but obviously when it comes to this stadium, I feel like it's just going to be remembered as kind of a generic, not, modern cookie cutter, if you want to call it that, because all these stadiums, at least the past 3 or 4 renderings we've seen, they all seem to be built the same. The interiors look exactly the same. Allegiant, this stadium, possibly the Bears' new stadium as well. And I don't know if it's really going to be remembered, which is sad because the exterior is extremely unique. It reminds me of one of those futuristic mansions that really isn't that big and probably costs like $9 or $10 million. And you sit there wondering, how is this thing $9 or $10 million? Well, it's because the building material is so expensive. The exterior of the stadium kind of reminds me of like one of those smaller futuristic mansion types, and certainly an extremely unique exterior. Like, you compare this exterior to the potential Chiefs' new stadium, to the Bears' new stadium, I think this is a better exterior for sure. It's just more pronounced. And then another thing to talk about, if you look at this these renderings from an aerial shot, the actual roof, the way the circle is structured, it looks like a stovetop, does it not? Like a burner? That's what it looks like to me. And obviously that's a very generic, you've got the circle with the translucent roof. The main question when it comes to the translucent roof, and I don't think Nashville should really have an issue with this, are they going to make it more darker or lighter? And I'm hoping they make it very similar to SoFi's and not Allegiant's. Allegiant's translucent roof is very dark. It basically dims out. There's actually no sunlight that can pass through that stadium. And you could say, well, it's because Las Vegas is extremely hot. Well, that's fine, but that's really not how you should design it in a place like Nashville. You should be able to allow for sunlight to hit the field. If you look at SoFi, yes, the sun's rays, they're blocked a little bit, but you can still see sun hitting the field. It's just less pronounced. So that's what I think we're going to see at this new Titans Stadium when it is actually built. But there are just some different photos of it. I was reading that there are going to be 2 windows behind both of the end zones that will be opening. So obviously with it being a translucent roof, it's not retractable. You're not getting any airflow through that, but you could potentially be getting the airflow through the windows, at least in September and October. I'm sure those windows will be closed once you get later in the year, but I do think Tennessee is doing a good thing because right now the current Nissan Stadium, it's a dump. There's really no other way to say it. I mean, you compare a new Nissan Stadium to old Nissan Stadium to like Cleveland Browns Stadium. The Browns Stadium's 10 times better than old Nissan. Old Nissan is crap, and they realized it. And you look at this new stadium, it's very similar to like Atlanta being proactive with the Georgia Dome. See, a lot of fans are like, well, why? It's only 25 years old. Well, the thing's a dump and it's not getting any better, so you might as well plan a new stadium at this point. I understand it's an issue if they ask the public to pay for it, and they did ask the public to pay like a 60-40 split in this, where 60% is coming from tax dollars. I wonder if something like that would pass now, even just a few years later, with the sentiment surrounding the general public funding these, multi-billion-dollar stadiums. Maybe it'd be a little bit different. I mean, look at the Bears. If the Bears had their proposal 3 or 4 years ago, it probably gets passed. But nowadays, I don't know. It could be a tough uphill battle for them just based on the stadium dialogue and people not wanting to pay the public money for these venues and the multi-billionaires profiting off of it and all the events that this place is going to host. Obviously, there's really nothing wrong with the climate in Nashville. Even when you get into the colder months, it can still be 45, 50, 60 degrees, but obviously they're very incentivized to do something like this and have a completely closed, climate-controlled stadium because they're going to be able to host the Super Bowl, because they're going to be able to host Final Fours, because they're going to be able to host multiple concerts during the winter, and that is the main reason behind a build like this. And also it makes it very easy for them because it always comes down to, if the stadium's 20, 25 years old, do you renovate it for $500 million or do you build a new stadium? Again, new Nissan Stadium is a complete dump. I would not dump a dime into that stadium, and they're not going to. It's smart. There's no point in trying to renovate it. There were actually renderings for a potential Nissan Stadium renovation, and they didn't look very good. And obviously just put the money towards the new stadium. It'll be 2.1, it'll be $2.2 billion, whatever it ends up being. That's standard for a stadium nowadays for sure. And they will be opening this likely in 2027. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about new Nissan Stadium with the date confirmed, February 2027. They're already demoing the surrounding parking lot, and they should be digging out the foundation relatively soon, possibly this summer, maybe late in the summer. And that's going to be a project to follow, especially if you're watching Titans games. I'm sure you get an aerial shot right next to Nissan Stadium. There's going to be a massive construction development. It's the exact same thing with the Bills, although the Bills' new stadium is being built adjacent to their old one. This one is like right next to it, but they are flipping the stadium in the opposite direction. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.